All right, guys. Good morning. Happy Thursday morning to everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. We've got our bi-weekly Prewett Pest Control Sales Kickoff Huddle. Actually, let's unmute for a second. Everybody unmute your line real quick. Let's get some feedback. How's everybody's week going?
Wonderful.
Great.
Rainy, but solid.
Rain. Yes. Yes, we've got rain. We haven't seen rain in a while. We're just talking to our guest today, who I'll introduce here in a second, who's from the great state of Texas, who I believe is in desperate need of rain, who has a lake with about 5 feet of less water than ideal. Is that right, Justin?
Right. That's
right. So we're actually gonna put this on our podcast, on the Journey podcast, guys. So be on your best behavior. We're going to have this online too, so we've got all your pretty faces on here, which is kind of cool. Seeing everybody, appreciate everybody being on and in a good spot where you can participate. So, Justin, just to give you a quick overview, so we started this bi-weekly huddle earlier in the year. So this is an opportunity for our inside sales professionals or outside sales professionals to get together, talk best practices, do a little training, just to stay engaged. And I know you've done similar, things in the past, with your businesses, and we're going to get into that. And so, I think this has been a really good place for us all to share ideas, lift each other up. And we're across, 3 different markets in the state of Alabama. So we do this through Zoom. I see my boy Casey down there, down in the Gulf Coast, who's representing. His partner in crime, Turner Mason, is not on here. I think he's out today on vacation. But so it's a good opportunity for us all to get together and basically just do a little training and like I said, lift each other up and talk best practices. And guys, I know you're all probably muted here, but by a shake of hands, do you feel like this has been a pretty effective thing we've done, so far this year? Yeah, that's right. So with that, I want to introduce our guest today. This is something we're going to be doing, throughout the rest of the year and into next year. We've done a lot of sales training. We've talked about BASPA, which is our acronym for sort of our 5-step sales process. We've gone through that, and I know for me personally, over the years, I'm a big learner from learning from other successful people. Right. When I first joined Allstate back in 2009, one of the first things I did was reach out and find mentors within the Allstate world. Right. I didn't feel like there was a reason to reinvent the wheel. I didn't feel like there was a reason to go out there and try to figure it all out on my own, because I knew there were a lot of smart people, a lot smarter than me, who have achieved what I was seeking to achieve. Right. And so it's been a big part of, I feel like, the success we've had, not only with our insurance business, but even with our pest control business. We've been in business a little over 3 years. And I feel like we've achieved a pretty good level of success. And I've got to give credit to a lot of the mentors that have helped us along the way to help us, whether it's idea sharing, whether it's let us go and tour their operation. I went through a training program from a fellow PCO, a pest control operator in the Carolinas, who I owe a ton of gratitude to. So, and it's one thing for me to sit here and tell you guys and share with you guys maybe best practices and tell you my experiences. But in my history, I think when you can hear another peer and you can hear someone who has achieved success, whether it's in pest control or another industry, I think it takes on a new meaning sometimes, right? I'm always intrigued to hear successful people and to hear their story of how they got to where they are. And so with that, I'm going to introduce Justin Slocum. Justin, I've known Justin for several years through Allstate. He's been one of the top, I would say, producing Allstate agents in the country, out of 10,000 plus agencies around the country. Just recently has decided to pass the torch on with his agency, to the next iteration of owners that are taking that and running with it. And I think he's got some new ventures, and I'll let him share that. But just to put in perspective, guys, and I don't guess, Justin, I realize this, that, we're our insurance business, when you compare it to premium, guys, just to give y'all some context, our agency is close to $9.5 million, $10 million in annual premium, right? So that's our annual premium of our size of our books of business. Justin, before he just sold his books, I believe, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were sitting around 40 million in annual premium for your books of business. Is that right?
Sure.
Pretty dang impressive. So not only was there the significant amount of revenue and premium in customers, but he's built a incredible team over the years. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and particularly how he's developed his sales people and some characteristics he's seen. But Justin, if you don't mind, I'm going to pass it on to you and give us just a quick background of where you are and how you got to where you are, and a little bit of your history.
Okay, sounds good. So how I got into insurance would probably be a good starting point. I'd partnered with a friend on a restaurant. Me and my wife have always done pretty well just as having a regular job and things like that. And so one day, for whatever reason, we decided we'd invest in a tanning salon. And so that's kind of where I got my taste for a recurring revenue business. And back then they were great. Well, the state of Texas came in and said that kids can't tan without their parents anymore under 18, and ours were located near high schools. So it was pretty tough. You get a lot of 16 to 18-year-old girls want to tan, a lot of young men, stuff like that want to tan. So we decided to exit that at that time, and we needed somewhere to put that money. And so we jumped into the restaurant business. If you don't know much about that, that's probably one of the worst investments, unless you just have $50 million in the bank or something. But so a year later, me and a partner had to exit that business because it just wasn't good. And so at that time, you almost feel like a failed business person. Hey, did well with this recurring business, sold it off, even took on 24-hour fitness. I believe you'll probably have those in Alabama as well, but they wanted to get rid of all their tanning salons at the same time that we were getting unloading ours. So I actually started to deal with them to unload all of their tanning equipment by January of that year before the new law kicked in. And was able to do that successfully throughout Texas. And so just those kind of two things got me hooked on that recurring revenue, learning a little bit about how that gym operated and stuff like that. And so went into the restaurant industry, got our fill there, didn't like it, was still doing HR work, which HR work can be a little bit boring to most people and myself. But I was working for a fun company called Traxxas, and they build high performance RC cars. They're one of the largest in the world now. But it was just a super fun job, and I was driving an hour and a half each way every day. So I knew eventually I was going to have to either move there or do something else. And then they moved an hour away. So at that point, it kind of triggered me to do something else. And whether that's another job or a business, that restaurant had failed. And so jumped into insurance and really just wanted to learn about it, very similar to probably pest control or anything else. When Rusty was looking into it, I told the guy, I was like, look, I'll take a sales job. My brain is entrepreneurial, so I want to own this, but I want to learn, but I want to tell you that up front. And so a year later, after starting at State Farm, I'd done pretty well. I kind of found my groove with how to sell insurance. And I told him, help me be a State Farm agent. I wasn't State Farm's cup of tea, so they didn't want me to be an agent. So I called Allstate. Allstate said, man, if you can sell what you're selling, we'll have you all day. And I said, okay. And so that started my journey with Allstate, and bought a pretty small book, about $700,000 in premium. Back then, they would give you a little bit of bump in commission, if you bought a smaller book in order to grow it, and then took that book, as you heard, to about 40 million. But over that time, what I was learning was how to reinvest back into the business. Luckily, me and my wife had done pretty well. I mean, she was still working full time at the hospital. We had a very low overhead on our own personal bills, and didn't have a kid at that time. So that also helped, with the finances. So, so we were able to get 2 or 3 years under our belt before we had a kiddo. And I just kept dumping it all back into the company. And I did that forever. And so in that, I started learning how to buy these agencies. I bought one. The second one was a failure, in my opinion, on me, but it also taught me a lot. So I guess you can gain a lot from, buying a bad investment. But then after that, I learned so much from that. When I got really good at it, started doing it for myself. But then other people were wondering, how are you growing so fast? How are you doing this? And I would tell them, I'd buy 500,000 here, $1 million there. whichever way, and then also grow organically by 500,000 or a million. Whatever I bought, I wanted to grow by that at least. And so I started doing that. Other people started asking me to help them for free. And I was doing it as a hobby. I just thought it was fun and able to help people strategize how to buy these deals, how to structure them. And then one day I got so busy with that, I just started charging for it while being an all, you know. And so that turned into a business. And so as we're going through there, I learned that I needed to deploy managers because I got to about 20 million and I'm still the main manager in my agency, listening to phone calls, helping people sell agencies, and just doing about 14 hours a day worth of work every freaking day. And really didn't even have my weekends because all I would do all weekend was just think. And so then I realized I need to bring people up that are in my organization that were truly already leading. They were really already taking that role. And so I had to deploy a sales manager and a customer service manager, operations manager, commercial manager, and really just compartmentalized all the way through that. And so that in turn allowed me eventually to be able to exit at a pretty large number because it was a well-oiled machine at that point. The things I learned along the way would be about 2014, I wanted to quit because I was just working too much. I really was looking through a glass ceiling, and this guy's my friend today, but I've reached out to him just as Rusty said, as a mentor in the industry, a guy named Craig Wiggins. He's there in Alabama. He's now one of my best friends. We travel the world together. But I called him on a whim. I was like, look, man, I'm looking through a glass ceiling. I feel like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, and I'm just not able to make that next move. And one pivotal, he asked me 4 or 5 questions about my business. And he's like, man, it just seems like your people are running in circles. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, have you thought about compartmentalizing your agents? And what he was talking about is breaking it up into sales and service. Let your salespeople be salespeople. If you can take anything off of them, take the admin off, take the customer service off, everything, and let them run wide open at sales, and then find out who your service people are and let them do it. It's typically your detail oriented people, maybe somebody that really doesn't have those closing techniques, has a hard time asking Miss Smith, hey, can I get your payment today, versus, hey, I'll email it and you just reach out to me. And I'm like, I thought of that because we were at that time, if you answered the phone, my motto was you handle it. If it's a claim, deal with it. If it's a payment, deal with it, whatever it may be. And so I was like, you know what? I got nothing to lose. Let's try it. That was December of that year. By March of the next year, I had quadrupled my sales. And it was just allowing that sales team to just run wide open, hold them accountable for what they needed. And then they passed the service off. So we had given them a sales assistant, just handle the paperwork, take care of anything after the sale was done, where they didn't have to worry about the extra payments, none of that stuff. Or if anything even went wrong, their inspection and insurance, you've got an inspection on homes, things like that, that may pop up. An underwriter may call about something. We've got a person to take care of that for our entire sales team. And she eventually was servicing 20 salespeople at one time for just one sales assistant. And so it worked out really well. And I attribute a lot of our success on the selling side to having that conversation with Greg that day. And we ended up becoming friends out of it. And again, why I even do this when Rusty reached out is because Greg did that for me. Prior to that, probably the first 3 or 4 years, it was really hard because I was just going to local people in my area. I didn't really even think about reaching out to other people in other states that didn't view you as competition. And so I'd get a lot of pushback on asking local people, hey, another Allstate agent, hey, how do you do this? And I actually had one tell me the wrong way to do something, and I truly did. And I got back and I told another buddy, I'm like, hey, this guy is doing this. He goes, do not do that. He's like, that's you get fired over that. And I'm like, oh, wow. And so it's just stuff like that you learn from people. And so now I just share as much as I can with anybody that calls and asks, and very even how me and Rusty met just about things like this. And so all that being said, that pivoted us, put us in a position to be the top 10 in the country. In 2016, we were still just rocking and rolling, but I had that sales assistant I told you about, probably one of the best employees I've ever had. I actually, even after selling my business last weekend, she calls me first, right? Like if something goes wrong in her life, she calls me. So she called and she's like, my AC's out. I'm like, my buddy lives 10 minutes from you. He'll jump over there. He couldn't get it fixed in a couple days. I had a few window units. We run them out there. She's taken care of. And we still have that relationship today. But I tell you that because when she came into my office after having a kiddo, she was off for 6 or 8 weeks, whatever her maternity was. She lived in a pretty small town, and they didn't have a daycare that would take her kiddo until 6 months. And so she was just going to quit. She was like, you know what? She loved being a mom that much. It was her first kiddo. She's like, I just got to quit my job, Justin. I can't do this. And at that time, being remote wasn't that cool in insurance at that moment. That was 2016. And I just sitting there, I'm like, I'm not losing you. There's no way. We can't run at this capacity without you. And we've already kind of built our operation around you, not necessarily the position, but her. And so I'm like, what can we do? And she's like, I don't know. And I just said, you know what? Will you consider working from home? If I take your desk to your house, and this is how small-minded it was, I load up a 6-foot by 36-inch desk in the back of my truck, and I head to her house. She was like, hey, if we can figure it out, I'm in. So I take all her stuff, because back then we had big desks like this one back here, not this little small one I'm on today. So I show up at her house, take up her whole second bedroom with a desk and all this stuff. And she just starts working. And it changed my mind on the remote work because she was so much more efficient. She didn't have people sitting at her desk, bogging her down for an hour and all this stuff. I'm like, man, this is actually working. So of course my staff sees it and they're like, hey, I'd like to work at home. I'm driving an hour each way, yada, yada. I could get some of my time back. And so we started making it kind of a qualifier. The qualifier was you had to be there a year. You had to be there a year, and I had to could work remote. You know, I felt confident that you could independently work and make good decisions around insurance policies because you guys know if they mess up your insurance policy, you're frustrated at them. You know, if you get in an accident or roof claim or whatever it may be, and it's not insured correctly, you're pretty upset at the person that insured you. So I'd sign off. We do that till about 2020. And in 2020, as y'all know, COVID hits. I'm in, at the time, it was spring break for my kiddo around March 17th, and I can't get home from the Cayman Islands. So we were there all week, and we're trying to get back into America, and they won't let us. The airport is saying the United States is not going to let you back in. And I'm like, I'm an American citizen. I should be able, you know, and all this. So at that moment, it was like this overwhelming feeling that I'm like, this is 10 times worse than I thought it was. I really, you know, you were hearing about it in January and February of that year, and it was like, hey, this is happening overseas and this and that. And then, you know, it hits America and all the other countries. And at that point, I called Courtney, which was the sales manager at that time. And I said, I want you to call CDW and I want you to order 25 setups for everybody. We are all going home and we're not going back. And she was like, really? But in our contract at Allstate, it basically stated that you had to have someone in every office 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, no matter what. And, but I made a decision at that time. I said, we already know how to be remote. Probably half of our team was already remote at that point, some of them in even other states. So we knew how to be remote. We were just abiding our contract with them, have people in the office. But I felt it was the good business decision for my team to ensure safety. We didn't know what COVID would be and what it was about. So I said, look, the right thing to do is put you at home with your families and we'll figure this out. So Courtney gets it all ordered. A week later, we've got everybody at home. They're rocking and rolling. And we don't even realize what we're doing at the time. But we look up at the end of April and we've had the best month we've ever had in our entire career. COVID. And so we're like, we may be onto something here, because what we were realizing is other offices were just shutting down and just kind of, I don't know what to do because we can't go to work, you know, or my staff doesn't want to come in, things like that. So then we had these lead vendors calling, just begging us to buy their leads. Hey, will you take on more leads? Can you take more leads? And then at that point, again, I think anything in life's about taking that opportunity and seeing it. I've seen, or what I'm hearing from those vendors was, if people aren't buying them, someone's going to, and so I'm going to. And so I went back to my team and I said, look, we got a good opportunity right now. I don't know how long it'll last. We can buy the best leads out there for a reasonable price right now, but we may need to work 7 days a week. Like, are any of you in? And every one of them stuck their hands up. And I think prior to COVID, I don't think everyone's hands would have went up. I think they were so worried about losing their job, you know, maybe their spouse's job, things like that. But I mean, I'm talking everybody's like, I'm in, let's go, let's figure it out. And so we jumped in, we worked 7 days a week and 12-hour, we basically would work 12 hours at a time. but it was broke up to where you weren't working more than 8 hours a day kind of thing. But man, we just crushed it. And then one day out of the blue, I get a call from the general manager of Allstate. I had no idea who he is, and I've never talked to him on my cell phone. So I thought it was a joke. I thought it was somebody like Rusty or somebody playing a joke on me. Hey, Allstate. I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, you were the number one, producing agent in the month of April or whatever. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I just thought he was congratulating. He's like, we need to know why. Are you cheating? Are you doing something? And I'm like, man, that's pretty awesome. And I told him, I was a little bit apprehensive because, as y'all know, in insurance, everything's about contracts and compliance and how you do things. And so there was a part of me that was reluctant to give up my at home, that everyone's at home. But I was like, look, man, can I tell you something off record? This is all I got. I don't want to lose my business over this. I was like, but I'll tell you what I did. It is nothing illegal. It is completely compliant. Allstate actually knows about it because they have to give licenses or appointments on the license in the other states and all that stuff. And I said, and he's like, yeah, as long as it's not illegal, we're good. And I'm like, okay. And so I told him, I said, in 2016, we started putting people at home, and it became a promotion to be able to work from home. It gave them an hour or two back of their day. And it was really good for the culture of my agency. And so when COVID hit, we just decided to put everybody at home. It was the best decision for us at the time being. He's like, man, that's phenomenal. Do you mind if I share your story on our next countrywide meeting or whatever? And I was like, yeah, no problem. What I didn't know that he was going to do, because I said it, I just didn't know how that he was going to do it on the call. I just said, hey, if there's anybody that needs help, feel free to tell them to reach out to me, and I'll try to help them. In that call that I wasn't on, I was in a meeting. He gives out my personal cell number. And so, there's 10,000 agents on the call or whatever. And so then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm just going to be overwhelmed with this. But I did want to help. That's just how I'm built. I was like, you know what? I'll figure it out. I'll schedule everybody and we'll just go from there. And this will impress you guys, because this will show you the difference in people that want to make a change in their business or their life or career or whatever it may be in life. 5 people called out of 10,000.
Wow, 5 people, all that knowledge, and 5 people took the invitation.
Yeah. And so it was eye-opening for me to see that in life. And I'm just like, man, we're sitting here. So many people would rather complain, I can't go to work, or, I need to rely on somebody else or blame somebody else. And 5 people called, and we just sat there and crushed it all year. I mean, it was to this point. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever beat that year for us, because it did calm back down. People started figuring out how to be remote. People started buying leads again, and doing all that. And then, which in turn, I've built this business. It does really well. Some guys out of the Northwest came to me and just offered me really good money on my agency. And at that point, I'd never seen that kind of money. And so I'm like, man, if you guys are serious, I'm in. And I'm like, I've exhausted my family. As y'all know, building any business, I'm sure Prewett Pest Control, you get stressed out as you're building this thing. And if there is an exit point at some point, like, you know what, I think I'll do that, and so they made me that offer, and we're still good friends, so we talk every day to them, because I wanted my people taken care of. That was what was most important. And it's even written in the contracts how they were taken care of. They got 90-day bonuses to stay on, because I didn't expect my team to stay if they were jerks. I felt like I'd vet them very well, that they would take care of my people, but I put in there, I was like, look, I'm going to give everybody a very large bonus to stay 90 days at minimum to make sure that you guys are taking care of them. It's like, but if y'all don't, they have the ability to go anywhere in the world. Now, I of course had to sign saying I would not hire them, persuade them away and stuff. But they could go anywhere in the world. They could go work at Rusty's office, wherever they did right. They took care of them. They're happy there, and everything's good. Because my team was pretty let down on me, which impacted me emotionally, that I did not even realize I would have happen. And so, but it's all good now. Everybody's happy. We're great. And then I looked up and the goal was, when I sold, so me and my wife were sitting there talking about it. I'm like, I love this stuff. I'm 39 years old at the time. I'm 40 now. And I was just like, man, what are we going to do? And she's like, I just want you to I know you can't stop, but I want you to take 2 or 3 months this summer and just spend it on, which is my son. And she's like, if you can do that, September 1st, go run wide open, whatever else you want to do. Because she knows, I mean, just when you're built this way, there's no way to stop. And so I was like, you know what, I'll do that. And so we did. We closed January 1st. We had a big fishing event with Texas Parks and Wildlife down at our lake that next week. And just every week we crammed it full of something. And my kid wanted to go up to Michigan and look at these rocks. He's big into rocks. These Jupiter-like rocks are up in Michigan that glow in the dark at night. And so I said, screw it, let's go. And so we just drove up to Michigan. And it took about 3 or 4 weeks to get up there and back, and did that. And then we went down to the Bahamas and some other stuff. And during that, I was getting calls, and I was stopping along the way. So I stopped at like Kevin Calder's office, Craig Wiggins, stuff like that. People I'd seen or that I'd known in my career that were in these areas. And so I'd stop by and say hi. And the one thing I kept hearing from people was they were having a hard time hiring remote staff. And it just, at some point in that trip, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm like, man, I'm really good at that. Like, that's something I'm good at. And I never had a problem hiring people remote. I never had a problem trusting people remote, stuff like that. And so it turned into a recruiting
Whole new business.
September 1st, we kicked that off, and man, it's been phenomenal. I think we're 6 weeks into actually doing it for other people, and it's going really well for us.
But well, I can give an advertisement there, and I can give a testament there. Justin, I reached out to Justin a few weeks ago. I mean, literally a few weeks ago, and kind of told him our situation. And next thing you know, we've got 2 really solid remote team members for our Allstate business. I mean, literally just like that. And it was just an incredible process. And Justin, look, there's so many nuggets of things that you've shared so far that I could spend hours and hours on going through. And a few things that I think would be really maybe give some perspective to everybody on this call. One of the things that I feel like I heard you say, and I would say every insurance agent and with Allstate that has really scaled their business have come to the same crossroad, and that's really separating your sales and your service teams, into specialization, which we've done years ago, through a lot of guidance from Craig Wiggins as well and others. And, but the second component to where we really saw a tremendous increase in sales and growth in our insurance business, which is transferred over to our pest control business, I would say is our ability to put coaching and training in place. Again, which is why we're having this call right here, right? In my opinion, a professional salesperson, right? What defines the best of the best, right? The top guns, if you will, right? Of of a sales professional, whether it's insurance, pest control, medical sales, I don't care, right? I think there are a lot of common characteristics. Number one, the coaching and training aspect, I think, has got to be there, right? And they've got to do things with intent. They need to know their objections they're going to get prior to getting them. They need to be trained and coached on what they're going to say when they get that objection and already know how to handle that. And so if I'm a salesperson, I go into a meeting or a presentation, if I don't already know the top 5 to 10 objections I'm going to get, I'm already behind the 8 ball. Now, look, some guys can BS their way through it. I get that. But for the most part, we should know those, right? We need to know what objections. We need to know the value that we're going to sell when we're selling our products or service, right? And we believe in our service. Can you just touch on for a few minutes the coaching and what does that, particularly for your sales team, how did that look, and what's the difference that you saw between your top producers versus maybe your lower level producers within your organization?
I would say the biggest thing, number one, just like you said, if the management team or the agency owner or the owner of the pest control company doesn't know what those objectives are, do not hire people. Like, get that figured out first, And so for us, it was big on what are we looking for? What do we want to train? Can we even train these people? Do we have the ability to get them trained? And what are we going to train them on? And my big thing was always finding a way that we're different. And pest control can't be any different than insurance, in my opinion. I feel like there's a million pest control companies around me. If I Googled right now, there'd probably be 30 of them. And insurance is the exact same way. So if all of us are going for that exact same perfect customer is going to pay us $50 a month, like, how do we differentiate from this person? In insurance, what I wanted them to do was start with $1 million in insurance. Most people, all of you on this call, somebody will have state minimums, and that's not knocking. But there's a lot of times when you can explain to somebody things they don't even know. They didn't know full coverage isn't really a term in insurance. It's a term in the consumer world, but it doesn't really mean anything in the insurance world at all, because there's certain coverages in your contract that say we will pay up to this and that's it. In Texas, that's $25,000 for a vehicle. And so most, I would say, when I say most, 75+% of the people insured in Texas will have $25,000 property damage. And I don't know what all of you drive, but I drive a 2020 F-250 King Ranch, paid 75 grand for it. If Joe Blow, my neighbor over here, hits my truck, totals it out, we got a $50,000 deficit if he's got $25,000. I want my truck, so I'm going to sue him and stuff, right? So I thought, what if we're different? And this was even prior to meeting Craig. I wanted my team to have something that they could stand on why we're higher. Because a lot of times, guys, and I don't know your close ratio in your industry, we were closing about 20, maybe 25% of the people at the time, just by going off of price. And I'm like, what could we go to get that extra one for that 30% or that 35%? What would change their mind? And so I said, why don't we just try this? Let's just try putting a barrier at $300,000. We're not going less than that. So we would start at $1 million and kind of work our way down to 300,000 is it. We're going to actually walk you out the door. If we're not a good enough salesperson or insurance professional to explain to you why you should have better coverage, and that we don't want the risk of you having 25, being upset that you hit Justin's truck and you got a $50,000 gap. We just don't even want that headache. And so we started doing that, and it changed the game, because now they had pride in what they do. They could actually say, look, we won't write you less than that, Miss Smith. I'm sorry I didn't do a good enough job explaining it to you, but I need to sleep well at night. I got to take care of my family. I don't want to be sued by you later for not insuring you correctly. So, I wish you well in it, but if anything changes, please let me know. The funny thing that happens is they'll talk to 8 more insurance agents. They all quote the state minimum. You'll have them challenge that insurance agent like, hey, but I talked to this guy over here and he said it's $60 more a month, to have $1 million. Why are you not talking about it? And then they'll call us back and like, hey, go ahead and go with it, because they're driving an Escalade or an F-250 or whatever it is. And so we won a lot of scenarios like that. Kel Staten is one of my really close friends and probably one of the best stories. When we were in office, probably 2015 or 16, I don't remember what year he was starting at Allstate, but he just wanted to see if my team was real, because he couldn't believe it. Because as a consumer getting into insurance, you just think everyone is built around price, and they're not. Like, most people want a good product or a good solution for whatever their problem is. And so I said, just come sit next to Lex and watch. And it was all day. And luckily we had an in-person. He still to this day thinks I set it up. I didn't. A lady off the street about 4:30. I'm sitting at a desk back here. They're up there together, and they start talking. And I can tell we're not winning. I can tell in just how Lex is trying to really put it on before she talks about price. Because she's not giving up the price until she really has the buy-in from this customer about coverage and protection of your family. And you understand why I'm going to show you more coverage than what you have today. Yes, I do. Blah, blah. She throws out the price, and Lex was confident in that price. She's like, say she said $400 a month. And a lady just kind of tucked her head and she goes, gosh, you guys are about $75 more a month. And Lex said, ma'am, I told you about all that coverage. I'm supposed to be. I'm surprised it's only $75 more a month. And the lady said, you know what? No one's ever explained insurance to me like this. I got a 2020 or a 2016 Escalade out here. Let's go ahead and sign it up. $75 more a month. She came in to save money, and she's paying $75 more a month when she walks out. Kel almost falls out of his chair. He's like, and he'll tell you, if you ever meet him, he's a big bow hunter and stuff like that. He travels the world, but he, that story is probably the coolest story that one of my friends got to see it and experience it, other than it just being us talking about it. Because you see stuff like this and people are like, oh, I really don't believe it. But he got to see it that day and see it work. And so it made him a better insurance agent today as well with his team. So I would say really just helping them understand why to be different, be proud in what you're selling, and make sure that you're solving a problem for them, giving them that solution. Because so often I would see customer service people just, no, we can't do that, without even offering like a solution. They know there's something else they can do, but because you asked a direct question, can I do this? No, you can't. But you could say, that's not possible. But what you could do is this, and it's $89.95 a month, and we can get you taken care of today.
Provide an alternate solution, right?
And so
And,
that
and
was what set us apart, was giving them something to be proud of.
I love it. And we talk about value, right? We talk about in the absence of value, that's when price is an issue, right? It's not an issue, if we can show the value to our customers. And I'll be the first to admit, when we first started the pest control company, we were, dipping our toe, and I knew better than this, but we're like, all right, let's just kind of be the low price leader. Let's get out there. And quickly I realized, hey, this is not what we're about. We're about using premium products, providing the best service, and driving that value. And you hit this earlier. A true sales professional can overcome those objections when it comes to driving the value, but it doesn't come, in my opinion, without practice, without commitment to your profession, right? And that's what I hope everybody on this call takes away from a lot of these calls that we do bi-weekly is, if you want to be average, do average things, right? If you want to be exceptional, if you want to be that top 1% in your craft, in your trade, you have to do things differently, right? There's a level of talent maybe that one sales professional has over the other, but I would argue that you can take someone who has the will and the skill, and they can commit to their craft, right? That's going to increase their potential by just sheer work and effort, right? And is doing those little things differently. What have you seen other than just focusing on value and coverages in the insurance business? What are some other characteristics that you've seen, when it comes to top sales professionals, whether it's in your industry or others? What are some things that you see out there?
I think in all industries you can attribute this. I'll say what we did in insurance. I think that daily accountability for yourself, not just that the company set this bar. I think all of us can just be built different. There were some salespeople on my team that were just fine selling a policy or two a day. They would run it out on their commission scale and say, I'm right there. I don't want to be a little bit more stressed out or anything. I'm good right there. And we were actually fine. If they sold two, I really needed them to average two in a month on the amount of marketing we were spending, but I would be fine there. But if they wanted to be pushed to that next level or that really great level, we were there for them, and we would build out a roadmap for them. But we would really have to have that in our conversations with coaching and understand that not everybody wants to sell 100 policies a month. And just some people don't want the stress of it, and that roller coaster of how sales can be. The first of the month shows up, you're back to zero. Let's keep going. And so I had to learn that. And so we just started building out roadmaps for each person differently. But we did have a floor of expectation. I needed you to average 2 policies a day, 40 policies in a month, based on what we were selling. But you would have those people that were just hungrier. And it was like, how am I going to get here? All right, let's back into how many calls you make a day. How many people are you quoting? So my big thing that we would look at is we had like a pyramid or a funnel that would go down. And it would say 3 policies sold is going to take probably 15 quotes. And in order to get those 15 quotes, it's going to take 80 to 100 phone calls. And so I need you to talk to about 8 households a day, which is 1 an hour, to be able to sell 3 policies a day if you're really good at this. If you're not that great at it, you're going to have to make more calls. And that's okay. You're going to get better at it. You're just going to have to understand you may need to make 200 calls to get in that range. And then as you perfect your craft, as kind of Rusty's saying there, is you start practicing with it, falling on your face, and then you start getting good at it. And that light bulb starts coming on, and you can overcome these objectives without looking it up over here and like, oh yeah, that one I need to say this. They know, the consumer knows whenever you're fumbling, and it really kind of breaks that flow for you. So I would say just having a daily accountability metric that is decently attainable. I'm never going to say give them easy, but there's something decently attainable that your average person over the years you've seen can do this if they do this. And then if they want to get here, you're going to have to be all in. This isn't missing 3 days of work every week. This is being on your game every day and being just like this. I mean, we got on at 8 o'clock, we're rocking and rolling. I have so many people struggle to get to work by 9. We moved our time to 9 because we were struggling to get people there at 8, 8:30, 45, and eventually we just put the floor at 9. I'm like, look, if y'all can't make it here by 9, you can't work here. It just how it was. So I think you've got to have some structure in your day, have the accountability of what that looks like in your industry and what is achievable. If I can make 100 calls to consumers out there in the industry or in our area and get 8 of them on the phone, I'm probably going to close 3 of them. That's about 37%, I think, somewhere in there. And you should be able to close that if you've got a good process and you're not just going on price. Because if you're just doing price, your data entry is what I would tell my people. Like, I can hire anybody to do data entry and we are never going to win at just being about price. So that would be my reason.
Dude, I love it. And guys, I'm thinking as Justin's, talking through this, how can we just show that value? If we've got a pest control only customer, right, and we know they've got termite protection, but maybe it's with a different company and maybe with a product that's potentially inferior to what we use, right? We use the Centricon, we use Centricon bait stations, what I feel like one of the best products, in the country, right? So when we see a customer maybe that does not have termite protection, or maybe with a less than, superior product, there's our value right there, right? If we know that customer is better protected by having higher protection when it comes to termite or mosquito, whatever, right? So this is already, maybe hopefully kicking some ideas around in all of our heads.
And I would even that point in your industry, and I will tell you, we got bad about this in insurance. We used a lot of insurance terms. I couldn't tell you what Centricon is, if it's better or worse, right? So you got to take that next step and break down what it is. Because so many terms, collision, comprehensive, endorsement, all this stuff. Consumers are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And we might be the best, but if we don't break it down in layman's terms and explain to them what Centricon actually does versus the competitor product or whatever and why it's more expensive, they don't know. They just hear, oh, you're $100 more a month than Joe Blow down the road. I don't know why. You use
Super good point. Super good point. And I know also through some of our training that you guys have done as well, Justin, selling by telling stories, right? Again, talking numbers and talking technical data, most consumers are not going to relate to. They're going to relate to a story that you can share that they can relate to, right? One thing you mentioned, and it's ironic, we talked about this yesterday with our inside sales team, was, the funnel, right? We talk about, okay, one of our challenges over the years have been getting buy-in for our sales teams to understand sales is numbers, right? We know if we need to get 1 or 2 new customers a day, that we may have to make 100 outbound calls to talk to 20 people. We're going to get several disconnected numbers, or we're going to get people to tell us to screw off, whatever. But we're going to have 5, 7 people out of those people we talk to who are going to say yes, give me a quote, right? And then we know based on our close rate where we're going to be. It's a challenge sometimes to get buy-in. And I think the top sales professionals that, number one, track and measure their activity. I've got some salespeople that just wing it. I've got others that know they need to track their quotes. They need to track their proposals. They need to know what their close rate is, because they can reverse engineer where they can back their way into their numbers to figure out where they want to go. Touch on that for a minute, because that's something we're constantly trying to reiterate with our sales teams when it comes to tracking and measurement.
I would definitely say the tracking measurements there. The part I didn't touch on that I should have earlier was the follow-up. When you've got 5 to 7 people out of that, right? You made 100 calls today, and your first day in with Prewett Pest Control, and you're trying to reach these people, and you got 5 to 7 that actually answered the phone and were willing to talk, whether you got them or not. Those, I am keeping those until they buy or die. Like, I am calling them every 6 months to every year, whatever is typical in your organization. But that is what I would say would be the big difference in a high performing salesperson versus a mid-level or average. Is they're just taking my new leads that I'm paying $50 a call for, or whatever. They get it. They don't get the sell. They might even put it in the CRM. If they do that when you talk about buy-in, that was a big struggle for me when I was in training, if they're 2 to 3 weeks in and they are struggling to just put it in and don't see the value in putting in Miss Smith and she owns a cat and putting notes, like other than she pays $19 at Terminex, like I need to know about Miss Smith. How am I going to win when she's not shopping for it in 6 months, in a year, and I'm the only one calling? People want to do business with people they like. So by the 4th or 5th time I've called her, she's liking me, because she's either hanging up. If she's still talking to me, she's going to tell me, call me again, whatever. But if they're still talking, that's important. Lex was my best person at this, to the point that she wouldn't even take our new leads. After about 3 years of doing that, and she's working this system, she finally sold her very first person she talked to 3 years later. And so I think that attributes that successful salesperson and that constantly following up and seeing the value in someone that will talk to you, that will give you an opportunity. Even if today they don't buy, they're still talking to you and you think there's opportunity there. You keep kind of wearing them down, I guess is the right way. But eventually they just say, yeah, you know what? I'm tired of them going up on me over here, or they've upset me because they didn't show up on Thursday. They got here on Friday. I had to take another day of work off. I would assume that happens in your industry.
Absolutely.
Stuff like that frustrates them. And then Lex is standing there being the person that's constantly calling, texting, email. She gets them. And so I would say that's why she would consistently write 75,000 a month versus our average producer was doing 20 to 25.
Man, so many good points there. So what I'm hearing is, number one, tracking and measuring. It's the activity that leads to the sale. We focus on, hey, I need to get a new customer today, as opposed to, hey, I need to quote or talk to 5 people about the service I'm offering. How am I going to get those 5? To your point, if I can make 50 phone calls to get to talk to those 5 people, or I have 250 phone calls to get to those 5 people, that's what we focus on. We focus on the process, not the end result. If we focus on that process, we'll get the end result. We're coming up kind of on the tail end of this conversation, and Justin, this has been awesome. I hope, guys, you see the value of what Justin's sharing, and guys, success, whether it's running a business, growing a business, sales, whatever, it's the same in every industry. It really is. I mean, the basic principles are going to apply, whether it's insurance, pest control. I don't care if you're selling dry cleaning. I mean, the basic marketing and sales principles are gonna, they're going to be the same across the board. So with that, guys, I want to give you the opportunity, if you will, unmute your phones, and let's give you about 5 minutes. Let's ask Justin some questions. If you have any questions, or you want him to dive into anything a little further, now's your opportunity. Somebody kick.
Yeah, Justin, I had a question. You said you were on a call with 10,000 people and only 5 people reached out to you. Did you check up and follow with those 5 people and see how they grew their business after that?
Honestly, I didn't. So I probably should. I don't even know that I remember the 5, because I did not know them. So
right.
Reached out, I didn't know them. I gave them my whole playbook and what I do, and now I'm never going to say I sell exactly in this zip code to a homeowner from 250,000 to 500, and this is how I pinpoint it. Especially if you're in my backyard, I'm not going to give that, but I'll give you my entire playbook. And so what we were doing is we had built out a playbook and sent it to them, and then I actually put them in contact with Courtney and Veronica that do it on a daily basis. Because at that point I was a little bit elevated, but I was like, look, these are the people that are in here managing these people. Because the hard thing that they were having was how to manage somebody from a Zoom like this. And what I would try to explain to them is, guys, when I had 6 different offices, I wouldn't drive to each one of them. I'd hop on a Zoom real quick, do a screen share, maybe pick the phone up. That's how we communicate it. And so we would just share things like that with them. That was kind of eye-opening for me, that that didn't click to them, that even in my own office, I wouldn't walk to the front desk. I would just hop on Zoom or pick up the phone, right? It was just more efficient for me, but that didn't click for a lot of people. So I should reach out. Now that you mentioned that, I probably should go look up that one. And
I was just curious, because it showed less than 0.02%, or people were going to take that initiative to find out, all right, this is the guy. And they have that information in front of them, and that less than that percentage reached out. I thought that was just kind of funny.
Yeah.
Great question.
I got a question.
Casey, what you got, Casey?
Um, if you're in sales for a long time and you're constantly using your mind and trying to talk to people, figure out all of these different variables to create a sale, over time, I've noticed sometimes with myself even, but other people as well. How do you deal with burnout? Like, how do you get reinvigorated once you've been on the grind for a long time, doing the same thing over and over?
It goes back to that follow-up. I will tell you, Lex has now worked for me 6 or 7 years, and I think she had more burnout in the first 12 months than today. And the reason being is she was constantly getting that new customer, and the first time talking to them, it's taken 30 minutes or an hour to spend to them, and you still don't get the sale. You might close 10% of that very new customer, right? But that follow-up 6 months to 12 months later is a 5-minute phone call. Hey, Miss Smith, just checking in, thought about you today. You popped up on my CRM. How's little Johnny doing? You ain't even asked about pest control or insurance yet. Oh, they're fine. Well, hey, I just wanted to that's great that little Johnny's doing awesome. I wanted to let you know Allstate took a little bit of rate decrease. You mind if I go ahead and requote that home and auto for you? Because we already have all their info. Yeah, no problem. Has anything changed? Any new drivers? Have you changed homes or anything? Nope, everything's great. Fantastic. Let me knock that out real quick. And she can do that in about 5 minutes. Get her the price, see if she knew it. Now we're doing 20 people in an hour versus 1 or 2. And so she's able to just walk through there like she knows them, like she's their friend. And now she's doing triple what she did in the beginning. Now, I do think if you are at that level, and I mean, she's probably making, 100+ grand a year at that level. I think there is a capacity that ends up happening that you can only get to that level, and that's it. I think at that point, that's when you've got to either bring in an assistant, either somebody that the company pays for, you pay for, something like that, to be able to take some of that load off, maybe even that initial phone call. Lex, we had thought about this before I sold, like getting her a sales assistant to call and just say, hey, Miss Smith, yeah, I'm Lex's assistant. They start to know this person and they're able to say yes, might even be able to knock that quote out, and then Lex call back and close it down. Very similar to myself. A lot of the relationships that I had built over the years, I just passed to my team. And because I was so good with them, they trusted my team and not even knew them and didn't even know them. So I would say that maybe that is how, in the end, you kind of mitigate some of that burnout. But I think it's always there, man. I think we all do. It's probably why I sold my agent. To be honest, I think there's a certain level of stress that you do get, but I think you got to challenge yourself to take time off too, and factor that into where you're not burning 60 hours a week every week. All right, every quarter I'm going to take an extra day or 2 off and just focus on my family, put this phone away. That seems to be my biggest problem, is I can't get away from it, because the more you do business, the more people want to do business with you, especially if you're good at it and they enjoy you. So you've got to put the brakes on, just like whoever's missing the meeting today, right? They're with their family. They're not on this meeting. You've got to take that break, and it's got to be a true, your hobby. If you fish, go fishing, put the phone at the house and fish all day. That kind of stuff I think might help with burnout, but it is hard to mitigate.
Hey, Casey, that's a great question. And two, we talk a lot about planting seeds, right? We're planting seeds. The amount of effort we put on the front end, right, we can reap the rewards on the back end. And I think, and I'll be honest with you, pest control is easier to sell than insurance, right? Insurance is probably one of the hardest products to sell out there. Harrison, you know what I'm talking about. You're on here. And so we have to drive value. There's a lot of times that with pest control, we're not going to be that, if we are more expensive, cost a little more, it's not going to be significant, whereas insurance can be that way. I think, Casey, too, is the more we can plant those seeds to start building a business to where at some point our referrals, because we've done such a good job taking care of our past clients, that our referrals are pouring in. And I think that's where you want to get. One of the top salesman for Ford, in a Ford dealership, is located in Birmingham, Alabama. This was years ago. And this guy was making unbelievable money, and it wasn't going out prospecting. Now, he did that in the beginning, but what you saw is he got so good at planting all those seeds in the beginning of his career, and the follow-up and the follow-through, and where he got to where 99% of his business was coming in through referrals because he did such a good job taking care of those customers. He didn't have to make 100, 200 outbound phone calls a day. He got to a point where he was getting those phone calls coming into his cell phone because people wanted to reach out to him because he did such a good job. And so, like anything else, if you're trying to work out, you're trying to build muscle, you got to put a lot of time in the beginning to get to that point, right? And it hurts, when if you haven't exercised a muscle in a while, it's painful the first few months until you can get some conditioning. And so I would certainly back everything Justin said with, with the intent of we want to get to a point where we've got so much referral business coming in that people are coming to us as opposed to us having to make those 100, 200 outbound calls on a daily basis.
And I think there's one thing that I will share here that one of my really good friends, John Pavle, is he's a rock star at Allstate, has been for 25 years and just crushes it. And he told me, he said at a conference one time, because I was just saying, man, the more efficient I get, the more I'm doing. Like, it's weird. I just keep, he said, man, you got to find the line where happy is. And he's like, you will chase money. You're good at making money. You will keep chasing it till it just eats you up. He said, I remember a time when there wasn't internet, because he's a little bit older than me. He said, I remember when there wasn't internet, and internet's going to make us efficient and give us our time back to spend with our families. He's like, you know what we did? We just went and made more money with that efficient time. And so I would say you got to find that happy median on like where you're happy at, but then find those efficiencies to give you your time back. And one big thing that I would say that we did really well was texting. And so we would say a jot form to a customer. Once we know, like Miss Smith, if she's ready to sign up or what have you, we're either going to have a sales assistant knock that out, or we're going to shoot them a quick text with the info we need. They're going to fill it out. It comes right back. It goes into our system and it's done. And so rather than that being a 10 or 15-minute call, setting up a customer, we shoot them a quick link within 3 or 4 minutes. They handle it on their end. We're able to take care of our other customers. And that comes in. We still have the relationship because we'll still talk to them on the phone. But just that admin piece has gotten a lot more efficient with technology. And I don't know if y'all have things like that yet, but texting is huge for me because I bought my truck. Man, even in 2020, I bought it over texting. I didn't even call them because I was so fed up with the process by that point. But I would say if you guys are texting and stuff, that could be another way to help with your burnout, to where I'm not having to talk to 20 people in an hour. I can send off 20 texts in 5 minutes and they're going to respond at their leisure.
I love it. Love it. Guys, let's wrap up with one more question. Anybody have one more question for Justin?
I'll give you one if you don't have a question, but I'll leave you with something I think is pretty good. Oh, Harrison was about to talk. Go ahead, Harrison.
Yeah, Harrison.
I've been patiently waiting quietly about it, but you are insurance. So, you made a key point in separation of task, right? So your team would be split, by the Red Sea, service and sales. And when you were kind of going through some of that, everybody's playing a hybrid and handles everything as it comes into them. I mean, what were some pieces of advice through some of that growing pains of like really isolating team members to, hey, you're service minded, you're sales minded, and finding that avenue? What's some advice or growing pains that you use to kind of like steer into that?
Yeah, the quick response is I had to break down what it took to take care of a certain amount of people. So for us, it was around 3,000 policies. And so I needed to know, what would it take to service 3,000 policies? And I'm talking like paying your people well, not getting the cheapest thing out there, like having good people, right? That will work a little bit harder. I'm not saying that people making $8 an hour won't work hard. I was one of those people at one point, but if you're paying somebody $20 an hour, it's a lot different work ethic, and so I decided I'd bump up my pay a little bit, but I'm going to ask you for a little bit more. And so I would have 2 people take care of 3,000 policies. And so their job, one was a senior level person, take care of all the hard hitting questions. Right now, rate increases are crazy. So I looked at that and said, for every 3 to really even 4,000 policies now, because premiums have went up, so you could probably even stretch to 5,000. And have one tenured account manager that's got 5+ years experience, knows how to handle pretty much anything, and then give them a CSR that can do almost everything: endorsements, ID cards, payments, be your compliance officer to just double check policies, be your sales assistant. If somebody's just at about 3,000 or 4,000 policies, I tell them that's exactly what I would have: 2 service people, 3 salespeople, and the agency owner. And they should be able to grow a very successful business at that point. But that CSR is taking on 4 or 5 different jobs that'll split off as you grow. So eventually, sales assistant, compliance officer, and CSR, just doing CSR, like taking payments, turning claims. And then you have that compliance officer doing their own thing, just making sure everybody's staying compliant. And really, that's not compliant in a legal manner, more of compliant for our agency processes and how Prewett Pest Control wants something done. This person's making sure it's done, or Justin Slocum, Allstate, he expects no less than 300,000. If they did it, guys, they got one write-up, and the next one they're fired. And I didn't care if they were my best person or not, because we really had to put our foot in the sand on a few non-negotiables, and that was one of them. So I would say when you're trying to do that, that's probably the best way, is to start with that and then scale it out. But eventually, depending on how your agency is built, you might have to have a commercial. Like here in Texas, we have flood. Alabama has that as well in the south part. So we had a flood and commercial department that kind of did all that together, because it's a little bit different than home and auto. So we had to jump over there and kind of compartmentalize more in that regard. So, but I will tell you, if you're curious, I've got it all written up, and we can email it all to you. And it'll walk you right through from 0 to 20,000 policies in PIP.
Nice.
You just put a smile, a Texas-sized smile on Harrison's face when you said. Oh man. Well, look, we're gonna wrap up here, guys. Man, this is awesome, Justin. Appreciate you sharing. I know the guys probably get sick of hearing from me every other week and regurgitating the same stuff. But again, I know your time's valuable. You've been so awesome to share, not just with us today, but with others over the years. And I'm a firm believer that there are no secrets, right? It comes down to execution. And so again, my challenge for everybody on this call: are you going to be the 5 out of 10,000 agents that call Justin to implement some of these things? Or are you going to just take it and just move on to the rest of your day, right? Justin, as always, man, appreciate you, brother. Thanks for all you do. And I hope you get some rain over there in Texas, man. Get that lake full.
Definitely. I appreciate it, guys. Thank y'all for having me.
Thank you, Justin.
Justin.